But I want to say just a few quick words about Katrina and how I got to meet her. Of course, most of us know Katrina from the Trump administration. We know that she started the Tea Party in Garland. She literally went from the grassroots to the White House and just has an incredible story. She ran for Congress. I think I saw in your bio that you're an inventor. I don't know what you invented, but that's really cool. She's worked in the private industry. She's worked all over the place. So very impressive biography. And the way I came to meet Katrina, it was on Twitter. We both share an affinity for calling out and keeping our state reps accountable. And this one particular state rep, he was misstepping and infringing on our Second Amendment rights, and we were holding him to account. And I looked at more of her Twitter and recognized her from the Trump administration, recognized her as that lady from Fox News who had she had a necklace made of AR-15 bullets, I think it was. And she looked the part of a Trump administration staffer. So anyway, I looked on her Twitter and I saw that she lived in Rockwall. And I sent her a message and she responded. And she's here tonight. So yeah, I figured that the chairman being good enough to come out tonight, as close to the end of session as it is, it's a real honor, sir, to have you here tonight. And I figured, who better person to introduce our chairman than a political celebrity like Katrina Pierson. So Katrina, how about you come on up? And they're also friends. I guess you'll go back to the Tea Party days. And okay. Tea Party became True Texas Project, as I understand it. So, anyway, Katrina Pierson.
Everywhere I go you're the lady that wore that bullet necklace on TV. It never fails. I'm really excited to be here tonight with people that I haven't seen in a very long time, so I'm really happy to see you guys. See you still out on the front lines and doing what we do best, and that is holding our elected officials accountable. And thank you for coming out, and thank you, Matt, for the invitation. Welcome to Rockwall County, otherwise known as my new neighborhood. So I have the great honor of introducing your speaker tonight, and Matt and I couldn't even remember the last time we met, and a mutual friend of ours who's here tonight reminded me that, it had to be somewhere around April 8th, 2009. So about 14 years ago or so, we met at a grassroots meeting. This is how I started out right here, going to these meetings. So guess what? You are the cavalry. And if you're not familiar, which great introduction, Matt, but if you've been here for about over a decade, you do know me as a Tea Party leader. 4 or 5 years ago, you've known me as a Trump spokesperson. If you're brand new and you're like, who is that lady? It's probably because I took about 2 years off because I needed it. After 19 hours of congressional testimony, it can be pretty exhausting. So I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you all for being strong and being supportive, because what we have in Texas, I think we take for granted. When all of my colleagues went to Florida, they said, hey, are you coming to Florida? I said, nope, I'm going home. After being in Washington, D.C. for several years, I've seen things I cannot unsee. I've seen Antifa up close and personal. I have watched BLM in action from my window in my apartment as they had to board up all of the downstairs windows and doors. That nightmare that you see unfolding on TV, guess what? They are coming for Texas. And something else I learned through this stint, having started with the Tea Party movement, the very first speech I ever gave, I said, no president can change your circumstances. And I kind of lost sight in that with Trump, so I thought, he's different. He's going to go down there, and he's going to shake it up, he's going to do what we wanted him to do. And then I realized, it ain't going to be a president. It is all up to us. The American people are going to have to fight this battle. Because the left, they're going to keep going and they're going to go with everything they've got. They're not going to play by the rules. They don't care about your morals. And if they can use Republicans to do it, they will. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to be here tonight, because I kept hearing stories about this chairman that was causing some upset in my state. And I said, I know that guy. He's just doing what he's supposed to do. What's the problem? Because when I was here, we didn't have these problems, with the exception of a few, but they're all gone now. And, it was our crew that gave us Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who gave us Attorney General Ken Paxton, who gave us Representative Rinaldi, who gave us Bob Hall. That's my crew. Okay, so you have to understand the shock and awe when I hear that there are Republicans in Texas who say, oh, I don't need the grassroots. That's news to me. I don't need the party.
Yeah, I know.
Worse. You want to know what's worse than a rhino? A Republican that works with Democrats to take out conservatives. Those aren't rhinos. Those are enemies of the state. I mean, is it really too hard? We have a platform. Is it really too hard to expect our elected officials to just govern accordingly? Why is that too much to ask? And it was just shocking to me, being a Texan. I'm sick and tired of Texas falling in the shadows of Florida. Did you know that the citizens of Vermont had more gun rights than Texans up until we finally got constitutional carry? Isn't that amazing? So in Texas, we don't really see, we think we have a red state. We do not have a red state. We have a purple state, and it is turning blue if we don't get our act together and start holding these people accountable. And it can be done because we've done it already, several times. And it's really not rocket science. But this is just not the time for ego games. It's not the time to cede more and more power to Democrats. And I cannot imagine sharing power with Democrats. Like, why do we do this? Ask yourselves this question. If or when Democrats take Texas over, are they going to share power with Republicans? Do you think Democrats are going to ask Republicans to help them get rid of their Attorney General with kicking A? No, of course not. What in the world is going on in my home state? So something told me not to go to Florida. Something said, you need to go home. Every time I do an interview on the radio, and we talk about all this madness, I don't have to hash it out. You see it on TV. You see the chaos, the insanity, the mental illness that they're trying to normalize, and everything else that they just keep shoving down our throats. And the host always says, when is this madness going to end? And it's very simple. I say, when the people decide it ends, it ends. So consider this more than an introduction. Consider this my public support for our chairman's leadership. Because I would hear that there were some officials out there who suddenly got primary challengers and they didn't like it. Well, guess what? Your constituents don't like it when you're out there working for Democrats. Matt is unafraid to speak his mind, and unapologetically so. Kind of reminds me of somebody. But he is a consistent conservative, and he has been committed to our state for as long as I can remember. And his wife, Coralie's kind of cool, too. So I'm here tonight and to introduce your speaker and my friend, Chairman Matt Rinaldi.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I love this YR club, by the way. Matt, love your club. I don't know who runs the Twitter account for the Rockwall YRs, but chef's kiss, you know. It's great. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Sharon Henson here in the back, our county chair. The county chairs make the Republican Party, the grassroots make the county. Thank you for being here, I appreciate it. Thank you to your great Senator Bob Hall for being here. Of course, SREC member Jerry Fisher. She's okay. She's fine. Well, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about where we are as a state, as a country, and what we need to do. That's what I always like to talk about here as Republicans. But I want to start out with a very important message that you need to hear and you need to understand. The Republican Party of Texas is a grassroots party. It's not my party. It doesn't belong to any elected official. You're the party. You are the reason why Texas is red. You are the reason why we are successful. You deserve to be heard, you deserve to be appreciated, and you deserve to be thanked. Your voice and your hard work matters. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the situation we're in. I want to frame it because it's so very important. It's so different than 10 years ago. Gosh, I wish we were back 10 years ago when we were talking about, tax rates or, the difference in property taxes, and that was the only thing we had to worry about. But we're in a fight to save America right now. I think Katrina had it right. And that fight is going to be fought here in the state of Texas. Now, we have consequences we see every day of Democrat national leadership, right? The economy, inflation. We are under the threat of nuclear war for the first time since the 80s. Just the general malaise and pessimism. Does anyone think America's doing well? No. We have a lack of national unity, and our standing in the world is lower than it's ever been. Mainly because we look on TV and see that Coney Island freak show that they call the Biden administration every day. With Rachel Levine and who's the androgynous luggage gnome guy. It's ridiculous. But the threat to our country is something more severe than it's been in the past. It's very different. It needs to be addressed urgently and differently. I mean, the threat not only comes from the government, it comes from every institution in the country. It comes from corporate America, it comes from academia, and it's a leftist movement designed to intentionally destroy our economy, to increase crime and chaos in our cities, to indoctrinate our children into leftist ideologies like critical race theory, like diversity, equity, and inclusion training, and into sexually inappropriate material. And it's designed to destroy anybody who resists. The goal is to destroy America. and to replace it with something terrible. To purge patriotism, traditional religion and family from our society. Now, they want to replace that with leftism as effectively a state religion. And I don't care what you couch it in. You can couch it in climate alarmism, you can couch it in diversity, equity, and inclusion, critical race theory, sexualization of children. That's what we are talking about. And what does it look like in practice? I mean, we can talk about it in theory, but we see it. But we see it every day. It looks like what you're seeing in New York with climate alarmism, where they're trying to effectively ruin a normal life for people who just want to go about their business. In New York City, they're banning gas stoves. They're banning pizza, wood-fired pizza now. They're banning internal combustion cars, which I know for Derek and I is a big deal because we like that. They're trying to destroy joy in your life, and they're doing it intentionally. But we see it much more scary, in much more scary ways. When a trans terrorist murdered Christian children in Tennessee, the media took the side of the murderer and encouraged more instances like that. We have the case of Abigail Martinez from California, and I don't know if you know who that is. It's a mother whose teenage daughter had mental issues. She tried to get her help. People at school or wherever convinced her daughter that she was a boy. The mother tried to get her counseling, but in California that's illegal. So instead, they took her away from her mother, put her in a foster home, pumped her full of drugs, and then eventually her 16-year-old daughter kneeled in front of a moving train and killed herself. The government kidnapped her daughter, did experiments on her, and led her to suicide. In Canada right now, you've heard about euthanasia in Canada, right? We've heard that one of the bases for euthanasia is mental health. They're doing it to kids. Did you know that right now, 8% of all deaths in the province of Quebec are euthanasia? That's what we have to look forward to if we don't fight back and defeat this now. It's happening here in Texas too. We see DEI in our schools. My own school district in a fairly Republican area in the suburbs had mandatory DEI training, mandatory CRT training for kids and for teachers. We're seeing it happen here in Texas. Texas Tech was downgrading job applicants who didn't believe in racial discrimination in hiring, or who didn't put a land acknowledgement at the forefront of their interview. For those of you who are sane and don't know what that is, that means when you walk into a job interview and you go, I just like to, before we get started, acknowledge that we're taking place on indigenous land that once belonged to the Pawnee Indians or whatever. This is happening in our state. And we're only one election away from Democrats controlling the state. And those terrible stories like you heard in Canada and California, they can happen here. And we're the only thing standing in between. So that's why we need to do something. And as a grassroots, we need to do two things. One, we need to win elections. We need to. We cannot afford not to win elections. And two, oh boy, we need those elections to mean something. They need to mean something. We cannot just be controlled opposition. This is too important. Well, as far as winning elections goes, obviously that's one of our purposes of the Republican Party of Texas. And I have to say, at least 2022, I took over 2021 in the summer, and in 2022, mission accomplished. We had a disappointing election many places in the country, but Florida and Texas, we did well. The Republican Party of Texas recruited more GOP candidates than ever before. We achieved record-setting Republican primary turnout. We've spent about $9 million supporting GOP candidates. That includes direct mail, direct donations, our mail-in ballot program, and we raised about $1.2 million for election integrity to place poll watchers and sustain election contests and fund election contests, which we're still doing right now in Harris County. The result is that every statewide official won Texas by double digits, and we increased our numbers in the legislature and in our U.S. congressional delegation. We made Texas more red for the first time since 2014, this past election. But none of this matters unless we use the power we earned. Now here's where we're hitting some snags. This is so important. The reason why we're in the situation we are now isn't because Republicans didn't win elections. We won elections consistently. But the last generation wasn't up for this fight against the leftist religion that was taking over our country. So God's given us another chance, and we better use it. The Republican Party of Texas sent a clear message to all of our elected officials. If you go on offense, if you deliver real substantive victories against the left, we will be here to fight with you and support you. Virtually every GOP official at every level of government took us up on this. Governor Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick set out a very worthy agenda with almost all of RPT's priorities among them. The Texas Senate was a shining example of what the grassroots are looking for. When your elected officials say, oh, I don't want to please the grassroots because they'll never be satisfied. Let me tell everybody something. What the Texas Senate did this session, very satisfied.
That's
Do
right.
that. Do that and we're good. I mean, we don't expect everything we want. We expect substantial success. And our congressional delegation has been allies in this fight as well. We have House leaders also that have joined us in this fight. Conservatives like Brian Harrison, like Matt Schaefer, like Tony Tinderholt, and so many more who have joined us to fight, to battle the left and to win. The only exception has been a small group that surrounds House leadership, and that's been very disappointing. They prioritize things like tampon taxes, gambling, Medicaid expansion, hairstyle discrimination and corporate welfare over things like border security, school choice, property taxes, and ending COVID mandates. This is a problem because we're losing America. I want to give you an example of, because I know a lot of people are going to point to like constitutional carry and the heartbeat bill. We did do great work protecting children. So I want to talk about some of that. I want to give credit where credit's due and talk about that. But then I want to talk about what was possible that didn't happen and that should have happened. And we know this because the Senate absolutely killed it this year. So all we had to do was pass one more House for so many things. First, let me talk about the good. We had a great session protecting children. We did. And thank God we did. We needed it. We passed a child gender modification ban. We finally completed the women's sports bill to protect NCAA athletes. And child drag shows. Sleeper bill of the session, pornography verification, which effectively ended it in Utah. Important bill to protect kids, and removing pornography from school libraries. And thanks to Jared Patterson, Jill Glover, Kristen Bentley, who worked so hard on that. We did well in fighting wokeism that's encroaching on our society. We passed an ESG ban on insurance underwriting. We passed a diversity, equity, and inclusion ban that, by the way, two people on that you need to thank very heavily. One is Brandon Creighton, who got a bill from the House that included provisions that actually required that the fired DEI officials be rehired by the university in another department at their previous salary. Kind of defeats the purpose, right? We hire the freaky purple-haired people, just maybe the department different. So Senator Creighton didn't know whether or not if he went to conference that bill would pass. He took a risk, and that risk paid off because they fixed the bill in conference, and we got a strong DEI bill. Second person, Matt Schaefer. Nobody knows this, by the way, but behind the scenes, Matt Schaefer fixed that bill in the House. It came to the House like in the Sanctuary City bill, completely watered down. Matt Schaefer forced them to fix the bill and make it good again. I mean, make it a strong bill again. Then they added on that section that they had to take on in conference. But the rest of it was strong because of Matt Schaefer's efforts, and he should be thanked. On election fraud, we moved back to a felony. We abolished the Harris County Elections Administrator, implemented Secretary of State oversight of county elections, and effectively got us out of the ERIC, which was very important. And there were other things as well. We're made it easier to remove rogue DAs. The local government preemption bill by Senator Creighton and Dustin Burrows, so very important in fighting leftist ideologies on a city level. You can tell how good these bills are by how mad Democrats are at them. They're pretty mad at that one, so you can tell it's good. Second Amendment, discrimination by banks on firearms transactions. We passed a bill banning that. Now, that's good. We can't leave anything on the table. Democrats have made it too far in the past 20 years. We have too far to go to turn the tide. And what I'm disappointed at is virtually all of the bills that died were passed by the Senate. So they could be done. They were worked through, the Senate vetted them, the Senate passed them. And then they were killed in the House by Republican control House. Democrats don't do that when they control a House. I want you to go Google when you get home as to what the Minnesota legislature did when Democrats took over this year. They didn't hold anything back. You almost have to admire them for it. The courage of their convictions, tremendously unpopular things. But when they get power, they do it. And we don't, unfortunately. And that needs to change. So, I just want to go through a list of Senate bills that were passed in the Senate that were killed in the House. And I'll try to go through quick, so there's time if you want to ask me any questions. Bob Hall's bill, Senate Bill 1029, detransitioner protections, passed the Senate on April 24th, never got a hearing in the Texas House. Brian Hughes, defunding drag queen story hours. The bill would have banned all state funding for libraries that host drag queen story hours. Taxpayer money. Bill passed the Senate in early April, never got a hearing in the Texas House. Charles Perry, birth certificate sex protection, basically said child's name listed on a birth certificate can't be changed, male or female. The bill passed the Senate in March, never received a hearing in the Texas House. Brian Hughes, ESG ban on state pensions. This is like the DeSantis bill in Florida that was so successful. The BlackRock CEO just this past week admitted that it affected BlackRock's behavior. Well, we passed it in the Senate, April 20. Calendars killed in the House. Brian Hughes, SJR 70, Parental Rights Constitutional Amendment, says parents have constitutional protections to their kids. The Senate passed a bill in mid-April. Only 3 Democrats were radical enough to vote against this constitutional amendment that says parents have the right to their own children. It died in the House, never even got a hearing. Donna Campbell, parental consent for sex education. This would have kept the status quo. Currently, there was a sunsetted bill that required parental consent for sexual education. It expires in 2024. Passed the Senate to continue it. Calendars Committee killed it. Gets rid of that requirement. Obviously, Senate Bill 8, school choice. So very important. I mean, this is a no-brainer. 75% of Republicans, 2/3 of Democrats support school choice. Passed the Senate, never made it out of Public Ed Committee. Included in that bill, and in a separate bill, was the child protection bill that was deceptively titled the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. The legislation would ban teachers from grooming children in the classroom with gender ideology. Senate passed it twice. The House killed it both times. Phil King, 10 Commandments to be required to displayed in schools. Passed the Senate in April, calendars killed it. Brian Hughes, critical race theory ban at universities. Would have stopped these Marxist teachings at universities. Ban on CRT passed the Senate in mid-April, never got a hearing in the House. Restricting gender ideology in public schools. Again, passed the Senate May 2nd, never received a hearing in the House. We had 2 vaccine choice health freedom bills. One being the COVID mandate ban. Calendars Committee killed in the House after it passed the Senate. Immigration. This is actually a bill that originated in the House. Matt Schaefer's HB 20. House heard it, named it a priority, and then immediately killed it when it came up on a Democrat point of order. We had Terry Leo Wilson wanted to ban in-state tuition for illegals. House originated bill, didn't pass the House, or it wasn't introduced in the Senate. We had election integrity bills. Senator Hall proposed a bill requiring early voting tapes be printed. Passed the Senate in April, never got a hearing. We had at least 6 or 7 other bills, including proof of citizenship to vote. Things like cleaning inactive voters from the rolls. All of this got killed in the election committee. Other conservative policy. How about the coal course, a Chinese land ban, which would have banned Chinese nationals from purchasing farmland, minerals, water, and timber in Texas. Passed the Senate, killed in House committee. And Mays Middleton, banning taxpayer-funded lobbying. Passed the Senate, never even give a hearing in the House. Now, after going through a session, leaving all of these things on the table, we still had a couple days left. What did the Texas House do? Well, they impeached our Attorney General. They did it with no direct evidence, without allowing legislators to interview or cross-examine witnesses. They did it without putting witnesses under oath, without putting witness transcripts, making them available to legislators, and without allowing the AG to defend himself. Conservatives like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump himself criticized the Texas House for this. What has happened? Then we have all of our state legislators coming home and saying, well, we just had to do it. It's very important that we impeach our Republican Attorney General who just got elected with 70% of the Republican primary vote nearly, and by a double-digit margin. Well, if it was so important, how come not a single Republican legislator was talking about it before 48 hours before the vote? And if it was so important, why did they spend more time debating tampon taxes than they did impeaching our third-ranking statewide official? It's absurd. Would Democrats do this? No, they wouldn't. And they did it in a completely illegal manner, not even taking into account state statutes, which said not only should they have done it differently, but they should have taken into account state law, which prohibited those counts from being brought up. This happened, by the way, because of something we were talking about at the beginning of section. It wasn't because they just thought Ken Paxton had to be impeached. It wasn't because of political warfare between Republicans. It's because because we have shared we share leadership with Democrats in the House. And this is what happens in a divided society where Democrats are on a mission to destroy America and replace it with something else terrible. And that's what Republicans are giving up to get their support and to get them as part of their leadership team. So what happened? Last session, they tried to give up a bunch of election bills for Democrat support. This session, a bunch of election bills again, and the head of our Attorney General. That was the price we paid for shared leadership with Democrats in the House. And what was the result? Impeached the Attorney General, appointed Democrats to leadership positions, attacked the Republican Party in Texas, attacked Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and killed Governor Abbott's priorities. So, they could come here and say, RPT's dividing the party, or someone else is dividing the party and causing divisiveness, or you guys are. They impeached the Attorney General. Who's the problem here? Is it the Texas House, or is it everybody else who seems to be getting along just fine? Now, I guess you could say, why? Why are they doing this? Do they hate conservatism? Is there some ideological reason? There's really not. I was in the House for 4 years. It's really giving them too much credit. They're acting like high schoolers in a very cultish show of behavior. For their most prized possessions, their title and that feeling of self-importance. And the Speaker protects that for them. He promises to protect them in exchange for his allegiance, in exchange for their allegiance. Some resist, and some buy into it too well. Your rep is a prime example of somebody who buys into it a little too well. I want to say the quote because I don't even want to paraphrase it because it says all that needs to be said. Justin Holland said, "Nobody in real Texas politics like when you have lapel pins, that's when you're in real Texas politics, cares about the SREC or its chair. It's a defunct organization and needs a total re-up from the top down. Local parties are AWOL." Sorry, Sharon. It's a mess. The good news is that they are all irrelevant and have no local or state respect. We can win without them. Yeah. No, don't. You know what? It isn't even coming from Justin. He hasn't had an original thought in his life. It's what the Speaker tells them to say. And meanwhile, so they castigate you, and then they go around taking selfies with Democrats, and they're all best friends. I mean, you see it on social media, right? I mean, is there really any other purpose to doing that other than to show you that you don't matter? I mean, it's the weirdest dynamic I've seen. Where do you see congressmen sharing inside jokes on their public Twitter or Facebook accounts? They do it because it's a show. That's why they don't text each other. They do it as a show to you, to show that they're in a club and you're not in it. Now, I have to say, your rep is not in the majority, okay? Like I said before, we are united as Republicans to fight the left. The Texas Senate, Congress, a congressional delegation, our statewide officials, most of the Texas House members, I think. And I want to say, Brian Harrison is a good example of what they think. Because he had a quote, and I want to read that to you. "If we are going to save Texas, it's not going to come from the top down, but the bottom up. Thank God for the Texas GOP activists, precinct chairs, and my amazing local chapter who work harder for freedom than those with titles and lapel pins in Austin."
That's right.
We are a unified party, most of us. Don't pay attention to the small but loud and grumpy outlier. we are unified as Republicans, and we are ready to fight the left. And when we fight, we win. Because we are effective as advocates.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. The women's sports and drag show bills were stalled before you guys started using your voice to move them. The grassroots helped shape the bill banning pornography in schools. Representative Schaefer and Senator Creighton were working closely with the grassroots when they were working behind the scenes to make that DEI bill stronger. And child gender mutilation ban, that never would have happened without years of your work. So pat yourself on the back. You matter. And because you were involved, we got those victories. We are capable of great things as a party if we all stay united around a common goal to defeat the left and to save America. You're important to this. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and Katrina. One second. We'll do a quick Q&A, and if you have any questions for the chairman or Katrina, just stand up and speak up, and hopefully we'll all hear you.
I've asked this before, and every time we go to another session, ever since the prior Speaker of the House, you get a guy that is supported by not the Republicans as much, but by the Democrats. And he tells us and takes care of it. And that's why our bills die. He makes sure they die. He makes sure people are put in position to get them to die. So how do we get rid of him? Because right now, his stock has not returned coming up.
You know, after the last month, I think he's doing a pretty good job himself of doing that. Listen, I'm serious too.
Another same type of person, and we lose our bills because it's froze.
I agree.
Done.
So let me address that. I'm being honestly serious. I haven't seen anyone do a better job of that over the past month than he has himself. But I think what you have to make clear is no matter who takes his place, it's going to be somebody who's been in Austin for a while. It's going to be probably a Republican who's personally conservative. But we need to make clear that sharing power with Democrats is a no-go. We don't expect everything we're asking for, but if you're going to be on our team, the red team, this has to be, everybody needs to be wearing the red uniforms on our team, or it doesn't work.
Any other questions?
Could you explain, okay, if somebody has done enough wrong with like this censor, is there any teeth in that? If you do that, does it help, or does it even matter?
So you're talking about party censures? Like, yeah, so like Rule 44, the question is Rule 44 censures have teeth or does it matter? I mean, I think yes. I think they should be used rarely and in circumstances where there's a strategic reason for using them. I don't think you should use them when somebody isn't up for re-election, or you shouldn't use them and just go censuring, everybody. It needs to be very rare, and we have used it rare. I think we've censured 2 people in the history of the Texas Republican Party. So it's something that I think means something and it needs to be that way. So what happens? I think it sends a message, certainly, to people who are voting and may not pay attention to party politics as much as we do, that maybe you should think more before you make a primary vote.
What do you expect to see happen from the special sessions?
The question is, what do you expect to see happen from the special sessions? I'm hoping, at a very minimum, we have a property tax bill, whichever, we need property tax relief, whatever that relief may be. And I think we need to see some sort of school choice. And in order to do that, the governor, I was very optimistic when I saw him vetoing bills, talking about the school choice issue. If it's going to get passed, it's going to be him that drives it. And we won't be here to back the governor as he pushes for school choice. I also think there might be other issues added to the call, like with the affirmative action decision today. Hey, today the Supreme Court made racial discrimination. I think we need to add that to the special session call because to close any loopholes in the decision and make it clear that we expect the state discrimination laws and the Constitution to prohibit any racial discrimination by any entity, public or private, in the state of Texas.
How many counties is Ginger cornered?
Louder.
How many counties is Ginger cornered?
I don't know. I don't know offhand. It's several, at least.
Brian?
Regarding special session, border security, emergency powers, what do you think, how important, for example, is emergency powers that it be on a special session? What do we need to be more doing? Do we need to be calling the legislature to convene within 30 days of the governor declaring a state of emergency or disaster? That would be Birdwell's Bill 1104.
Yeah. No, I think it's important to start talking about border security and ask him to add it to the call. We didn't do anything major on border security during regular session. Matt Schaefer's bill was probably the best proposal we had. I'd like to see that be done in a special session as well as Birdwell's. Even more important now with the Supreme Court decision that went against the state of Texas.
Got time for one more.
What's your personal assessment of the integrity of the elections in Texas?
My personal assessment is, we raised $1.2 million for election integrity and to do election contests this past election. So that kind of tells you how I think, looking at the election ahead of time, what we thought we would need to do. And we're still raising money for the election contest. I think it's very concerning. And I expect RPT to play a big role again in election integrity. Certainly what we did helped. We staffed every polling location in Dallas County where we only had, I think, 10 staffed with poll watchers the election before. We staffed 100% of our targeted districts in Harris. But obviously Harris was a concern. But we didn't have the degree of issues that we thought we would have in Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio. So we saw what we were doing was working when Harris was the big outlier. It gives us more of a focus. But I'm concerned, and I expect RPT to again do our election integrity program and try to raise more funds than we did last time. Thank you, I appreciate it.